You know that feeling. You are sitting on the couch. Maybe the TV is murmuring in the background, but your neck is just craned downward.
Yeah, totally locked in.
Right. You are completely tethered to that glowing rectangle in your hand. And like an hour goes by. Then two.
And you haven't moved at all.
Exactly. You haven't actually moved a single muscle, but somehow you feel entirely drained. It's this silent toll that our screens take on our minds, like this invisible weight we are carrying around without ever really stopping to question the actual mechanics of it.
Well, it has basically become the defining posture of our era. You know, the physical slump perfectly mirrors this deep underlying mental exhaustion. I mean, we exist in this strange state of being constantly connected to the entire world, yet somehow we're profoundly depleted within ourselves.
Yeah, depleted is the perfect word for it. And that brings us to why we're here today. You shared a really fascinating document with us, simply titled jakestory.pdf. And you brought this to us because you wanted to understand the invisible gears turning behind your own digital habits. So we've custom tailored today's deep dive just for you. Our mission is to unpack a highly prevalent, but honestly, rarely analyzed modern issue. We're looking at how unlimited digital overstimulation, and specifically pornography addiction, quietly rewires the human brain and fundamentally alters our reality.
And because it is a subject fraught with so much social stigma, it almost never receives the objective, mechanical analysis it deserves. But stripping away the judgment allows us to just look at the raw neurobiology and the mechanics of what happens in the brain in these scenarios. They are universally relevant to literally anyone holding a smartphone.
Yeah, it's not just a niche issue. So whether you are insanely curious about neuroscience or, you're just looking for strategies to reclaim your focus, this deep dive is going to provide some major aha moments.
Yeah, definitely.
We are going to look at how the brain's reward center actually operates and why, after staring at a screen for too long, the real physical world can suddenly start to feel, well, incredibly boring.
Okay, let's unpack this by looking at Jake's journey. So, Jake is 19 years old. And his story serves as this perfect case study because he completely defies the cultural stereotype of, what a person battling an addiction is supposed to look like.
Yeah, on the outside, he looked totally normal. I mean, he is going to college, he is laughing with his friends, he is active on social media just like everyone else.
It's a totally regular guy.
Right. But inside, Jake was fighting a completely silent battle with an addiction to porn and excessive masturbation. And the document makes it clear that it didn't start with some massive dramatic crash.
No, it rarely does.
It started with tiny, almost imperceptible rationalizations. He would tell himself things like, oh, it helps me relax, or everybody does it.
Or it's really not a big deal.
Exactly.
The really insidious nature of behavioral addictions lies in those exact rationalizations. It feels so harmless early on because there is no immediate catastrophic consequence, You don't wake up the next day with a severe hangover or a wrecked car, but one video becomes two.
And two becomes three.
Right. 2 videos quietly morph into hours consumed every single night.
And then the physical symptoms started creeping into his daily life. Jake started waking up deeply fatigued every single morning. His eyes felt heavy. His whole body just felt weak.
He was completely drained of energy.
Yeah. He lost interest in playing sports, reading books, even just having casual conversations or sitting down for family dinners. A crucial insight we pulled from his story is that this kind of overstimulation doesn't destroy people on the outside first. It destroys them on the inside first.
Yeah, the internal rot.
Exactly. He became socially awkward, found it physically difficult to even make eye contact, and he couldn't talk to girls naturally anymore.
What's fascinating here is the stark contrast between internal and external destruction. I mean, if someone has a severe substance abuse issue, the external signs usually manifest quickly and very visibly: erratic behavior, physical deterioration, massive life disruption.
So everyone around them notices.
Exactly. But with digital overstimulation, the danger lies in how incredibly slowly the damage occurs. It's a little less focused today, a little more loneliness tomorrow, a slight, almost unnoticeable dip in confidence. And because the outside facade looks completely intact, neither the individual nor their community realizes the foundation is crumbling until it's almost entirely gone.
It honestly makes me think of like a termite infestation in a house.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. You walk by this house on the street and it looks picture perfect. The paint is fresh, the lawn is impeccably mowed, the windows are shining. But behind the drywall, the structural integrity is quietly being eaten away 24 hours a day.
Just completely hollowed out.
Yeah, it is being hollowed out from the inside. And by the time the porch sags or a wall caves in, the damage is immense. That was Jake. And that hidden internal destruction wasn't just him going through a psychological phase or like a bad mood. It was a literal physical hijacking of his neurobiology.
And this is where we are crossing the bridge from outward behavior to internal brain chemistry. Because the brain's reward system fundamentally changes its architecture when it is exposed to unnatural levels of stimulation over prolonged periods.
The neuroscience of numbness. That is the core mechanism we really need to explore here. Because Jake's brain became conditioned to seek quick dopamine to cope with anything remotely uncomfortable.
Stress, boredom, loneliness.
Sadness, yeah. The second he felt a negative emotion, his thumb just went straight to his phone. But the terrifying reality of his situation is that eventually normal, everyday happiness started to feel incredibly weak.
And to understand why normal happiness felt weak, we really have to look at the evolutionary biology of dopamine. Because dopamine isn't just the pleasure chemical, which is how people usually talk about it. It is the molecule of anticipation and motivation.
It drives us to do things.
Exactly. It drives us to seek out things necessary for survival. So think about the brain as having a set baseline for joy and excitement. Simple things, walking outside in the sun, studying for a test, working hard at a hobby, or just talking to a friend. These activities release normal, healthy amounts of dopamine.
But introducing an extreme artificial stimulus completely shatters that baseline. I mean, endless explicit videos flood the brain with massive, highly unnatural spikes of dopamine.
Right, and to protect itself from this toxic overload, the brain actually engages a process called downregulation. It physically reduces its number of active dopamine receptors.
Wow, so it just shuts them down. It's like walking into a painfully loud rock concert. At first, the music is absolutely deafening, so you put in earplugs to protect your eardrums.
Right.
But when you leave the concert and walk outside onto a quiet street, you can't hear the birds singing or your friend talking to you because those earplugs are still in. The brain is essentially putting in dopamine earplugs to survive the overwhelming screen time.
That is exactly it.
Which makes the entire real world seem completely silent.
That is the exact mechanism of neuroplasticity at work here. The brain keeps demanding more extreme fantasy, more novelty, and more videos, just to feel a baseline level of okay through those earplugs. So the simple, everyday things no longer register on the receptors. They physically stop feeling exciting.
And it wreaked absolute havoc on his physical health, especially his sleep. I mean, Jake was staying awake late into the night, sitting in dark rooms, holding a bright screen literally inches from his face.
Which is terrible for your circadian rhythm.
Horrible. The blue light and the dopamine spikes meant his brain was never entering deep, restorative sleep, so he was waking up exhausted. And that chronic low energy just bled into everything. His posture slumped, his gym performance tanked, his baseline discipline vanished.
Yeah, it tainted every area of his life.
And it all culminated in one incredibly jarring moment. His younger brother looked at him one day out of nowhere and asked, "Why are you always angry and tired?"
Man, kids are brutal. But children are often the most objective observers. They just process the raw data of how someone is behaving without, filtering it through social politeness or assumptions.
Yeah, they just say what they see. And Jake had no answer for his brother, but that night, he looked at himself in the mirror and realized he didn't even recognize the person staring back. But I want to pause and challenge something here, though.
Sure.
Is the explicit content itself the sole villain in this scenario? Like, looking at the broader context of our digital habits, I have to ask, is it just the content? Or is it the fact that modern smartphones give us 24/7 unlimited access to a level of artificial stimulation that the human brain simply wasn't designed to handle?
That is a really important question, and the duality of that problem is critical. The smartphone is the delivery mechanism, and it is a historically unprecedented one. I mean, this 24/7 access is directly linked to a whole host of modern societal struggles. Plummeting attention spans, chronic low motivation, emotional numbness, and, skyrocketing social anxiety. Because the human brain evolved in an environment of scarcity, where securing a reward like food or social connection required immense physical and social effort.
You had to work for it.
Exactly. Today, we live in an environment of absolute frictionless abundance. Zero effort is required.
So the brain becomes completely overloaded by the sheer ease of access.
Right. It shifts the baseline of what it takes to feel joy, regardless of whether that endless stimulation comes from porn, infinite scrolling on social media, or, hyper-engaging video games. The explicit content is uniquely potent because it hijacks the reproductive drive. But the frictionless access provided by the phone in your pocket is what makes the trap so inescapable.
So the moment with his brother staring into the mirror, that was Jake's wake-up call to the damage. But merely seeing the damage isn't always enough to stop a deeply ingrained behavior, right? What actually broke the spell for Jake was learning the truth about the source of his dopamine.
Yeah, he was forced to confront the stark reality of the industry he was mindlessly consuming.
And the contrast he discovered is incredibly jarring. I mean, on the screen, the fantasy presents a world entirely built around happiness, pleasure, and eager consent. But when Jake looked behind the curtain of the industry, he found a really dark reality.
It's a completely different picture.
Former actors deal with profound, documented struggles. We're talking severe depression, anxiety, rampant drug abuse, and lasting emotional trauma.
And shattering that illusion is a necessary step in dismantling the appeal, because many performers rely heavily on drugs or alcohol just to stay awake, to numb physical pain, or to handle the immense psychological stress.
Or just to endure the incredibly long, grueling filming hours.
Exactly. They often speak about feeling entirely emotionally broken after spending years in the industry.
That was the harsh realization for Jake. He realized he was spending hours every single day for years learning about intimacy and relationships from people who are often suffering and emotionally broken themselves. I mean, real relationships require immense patience. They require miscommunications, active effort, and emotional maturity.
Real vulnerability.
Right. Porn requires absolutely nothing except clicking a screen and watching strangers. Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It is like taking driving lessons from someone who is actively crashing a car into a wall.
That's exactly what it's like.
Why would you train your brain for real, nuanced human connection using a mechanism that is built on fantasy, physical detachment, and, behind-the-scenes suffering? It makes no logical sense once you actually pull back the curtain. But I have to admit, I'm a little confused by one aspect of this.
What's that?
Does knowing the industry is bad really stop a neurological addiction? People know fast food is terrible for them. They know how factory farming works, but they still drive through and eat the burger.
That is an excellent point of friction. Knowing something is logically bad rarely stops a purely chemical addiction. However, pornography addiction relies on something fast food does not arrive: the suspension of disbelief.
Oh, interesting.
It requires the consumer to believe in the fantasy playing out on screen to achieve arousal. So when you expose the grim reality, the drug use, the coercion, the emotional trauma, you destroy the fantasy. You introduce cognitive dissonance.
You can't unsee it.
Exactly. The brain can no longer fully suspend disbelief because the conscious mind is now aware of the suffering behind the pixels. It doesn't instantly hear the chemical dependency, but it ruins the escapism, which is the necessary first step.
It poisons the well of the fantasy. Understanding that dark reality gave Jake his why-like, the deeply personal reason he needed to change. But as we just noted, knowing why you need to escape a dopamine loop and actually knowing how to do it on a Tuesday night when you're stressed and alone, those are two very different things.
Right. And the transition from philosophical motivation to tactical execution is where most people fail, because relying on willpower alone almost never works against a neurologically ingrained habit. Willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day.
Willpower alone rarely works. Yeah. So what did his actual recovery architecture look like? Because the first week was, frankly, grueling. His brain was screaming for its usual dopamine hit. Every single night he felt intense urges.
He was probably climbing the walls.
Oh yeah, the text says every day he felt a restless, crawling sensation under his skin. But he didn't just sit on his hands and hope for the best. He implemented very specific physical steps.
He altered his environment and his behavior simultaneously.
Right. He started going to the gym. He laced up his shoes and went for morning runs. He actively deleted all his hidden folders, wiped his search histories, and strictly unfollowed any triggering content on social media. But the most crucial step of all was a structural change. He stopped allowing himself to be alone all day.
That is huge, because addiction thrives in the dark and grows exponentially stronger in isolation. By forcing himself out of isolation, Jake removed his primary environmental trigger, which was being alone in his room with an unlocked phone.
He removed the opportunity.
Exactly. And simultaneously, by engaging with people, he began seeking out natural, healthy dopamine through actual social interaction.
And the physical results of those changes were profound. Slowly, the dopamine earplugs came out. His mind calmed down. Music started sounding richer. Food actually tasted better.
Our receptors were coming back online.
Yeah. His eyes stopped looking hollow and glazed over. One of his friends even came up to him randomly and asked, "What changed about you? You seem happier." And he genuinely was. But Jake arrived at one specific underlying philosophy that I really want to dissect here. He concluded that discipline creates freedom. So what does this all mean?
It sounds totally backwards at first.
Right on the surface, that sounds like a complete contradiction.
Yeah.
How does restricting yourself, practicing strict discipline, and facing painful discomfort actually lead to feeling mentally free?
Well, to understand that paradox, we have to look at neuroplasticity again. A strong mind isn't built by avoiding discomfort. It is built by facing discomfort without escaping into a digital pacifier.
Yeah.
Every single time Jake felt the urge to look at his phone and instead chose to do a push-up or walk outside or call a friend, he was actively forcing his brain to fire new electrical signals.
He was carving new roads in his brain.
Exactly. He was growing new neural pathways. When you are ruled by your impulses, you aren't free. You are a biological slave to your next dopamine hit. Jake was literally a prisoner to his phone's notifications and his own neurochemistry.
Trapped by his own habits.
Right. So discipline, the physical act of saying no to the immediate, easy urge, was the mechanism that allowed those old, addicted neural pathways to atrophy and die off.
Because the goal of his recovery wasn't merely like avoiding porn. Just running away from something is a negative goal. The real goal was getting his life, his time, his energy, and his fundamental identity back.
Because the addiction steals your time first.
Then it drains your energy.
Then it erodes your discipline.
And finally, it hollows out your identity.
Yeah. When Jake embraced the severe pain of withdrawal and the strict discipline of his new routine, he physically restored his brain's baseline dopamine receptors. He reclaimed ownership of his choices. And that restoration of control, that is true, biological freedom.
So bringing this all together, the ultimate lesson we can extract from Jake's journey is that his hardest battle was never actually against an industry or a specific app on his phone.
The external triggers were just the battlefield?
Yeah, the hardest battle was entirely internal. It was a war against his own lack of control. Once he mastered self-control and rebuilt those neural pathways, literally every part of his life improved. It's a really powerful, actionable reminder that real, enduring happiness doesn't come from endless, frictionless stimulation.
It never does.
It comes from having a purpose, from maintaining your health, from cultivating self-respect, and from actively engaging with the messy, beautiful, real world.
Because the real world demands effort. A frictionless, purely digital life is ultimately a hollow one.
Which leaves us with a question for you to reflect on.